Sally, thanks very much. And actually, it feels like a momentous occasion you handing over to me because I think for a little while you won't be handing over to me while you go on maternity leave. So, can I, on behalf of the Lynn, thank you for all what you've done in terms of putting on these wonderful happy hours over the years. But moving on to today's session, as Sally highlighted, this is co-production week, and we're putting on the spotlight on community-led and co-housing, and thinking a lot more about how we engage and co-produce with local communities. And we're joined by three fantastic organisations, four presenters who are going to sort of run through different aspects of how they work around this in terms of co-production and community partnering. So we're joined by Francis, Head of Community Partnering at Town. Francis, I think you live and breathe it as well as professionally work it as well, and I'm sure you'll touch on that. Next up is Harry. For those of you who don't know, Harry's recently written a HousingLIN case study on a really new, exciting project with Housing 21 and a scheme that's recently opened in Lozells and Birmingham, and a little bit more of that from Harry shortly, and the co-housing development there. And then we're joined by Nick and Andy, both in terms of local area coordination, and that's a really great sort of piece of work that Community Catalysts undertake, and Andy about shared lives and being a carer within that as well. So Andy, welcome. I think this is your first time. Others have presented before, but it's really good to get your perspective as well. Before I hand over to Francis, I should also just add that our happy hour series are already also under the umbrella of our exciting new SHAPE exchange program, suitable housing for an aging population, evidence exchange. More about that on our website if you're not familiar with that. But without further ado, can I pass on to Francis to kick off this afternoon session? And a very warm welcome, Francis. It was great to have you on the APPG intergenerational inquiry as well, and your insights were really top class. So thanks a lot, and we look forward to hearing a lot about your co-housing approach.
Say that again. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for the invitation. Let's get going. This is an artist's impression of Marmalade Lane, where I live, and I'm just going to sort of talk through the sort of co-housing approach as to designing with communities in mind. So let's get going. So I'm just activating my presentation. I think first thing to say is this umbrella of community-led housing is quite big, and there's quite a wide range of approaches that sit under that umbrella. So this slide really is trying to capture that and where co-housing fits in that or under that umbrella. Co-housing is really focused on creating community. That's its raison d'etre, and it does that by its approach to design and to, I suppose, in conventional terms, estate management after completion. And it has a slightly different emphasis to community land trusts or cooperatives or self and custom builds. So we probably need to start with what co-housing is. Despite living in a co-housing community, I've never really nailed the elevator pitch on this. So in a nutshell, it's a more convenient, sustainable, connected way of living where people have their own homes, but they have additional shared spaces which they jointly manage and make use of with their neighbours. And it's really designed to encourage social interaction and provide opportunities for collaboration. And it's usually co-designed with residents. So it's a highly co-productive approach to housing and a very intentional approach to housing. And it comes out of a developments in Denmark in the 1960s when women were staying in the workforce after having children and looking for a better way of living. Still quite rare in the UK, but hopefully a combination of Town and Housing 21, we'll see some real growth over the next few years. So that's a little bit around what it is. This slide really tries to capture why our experience of what people are looking for when they start thinking about co-housing. And overridingly, it's about a desire for a greater sense of community. It comes up time and time again that that's what people are looking for. Sustainability is important. The idea of sharing more resources is important, but the overriding thing is this desire to be part of something bigger than themselves, and for human connection, social interaction. And it appeals both to people who are thinking about how they might age well. Perhaps their children have left home and they're thinking about downsizing and future proofing, but equally to younger people, perhaps with children, or are thinking about having children in a multi-generational context. And I probably just need to highlight that co-housing comes in different forms. And this is an image, a CGI of a community that's in the pipeline as part of a wider regeneration of Wolverton's town centre. It will contain a senior co-housing community for people who are 50 plus. And so that's coming alongside. And this is an image of Angel Yard, which is has in the centre of Norwich. It has quite an emphasis on apartments, but it's still multi-generational. And then that's in this community, once it's built, Golden Lane Housing will have 2 apartments within it, where the support is going to the houses are for people who need additional support and have additional needs. Very much looking for that community context around it. And this is one from a new town where there's going to be 2 co-housing communities next to each other, sharing resources both within the community and with each other. And there we've got a Buddhist community and a multi-generational community. And then this slide, really, we're starting to shift into how co-housing thinks about design and building community in that context. So this is an artist's impression of Marmalade Lane, where I live. And what you can see is co-housing combines self-contained, sort of conventional properties alongside some shared facilities. And that transparent building is the common house, which is typical in co-housing. And it uses design purposefully to encourage social interaction, everything from moving the cars away from the front door so that people are walking to their cars and might meet their neighbours as they pass through the community, through to thinking about having a shared laundry in the common house, are all features that are designed to create those moments for incidental social interaction. And the other aspect of building community using the design is that the design process itself is used to build community by involving future residents in that process, alongside the professional team of designing the community. And that goes on once the sort of construction process, really the focus for the development. The emerging group is really starting to think very consciously about co-creating their future community and what that might involve. And then a couple more slides. These are some of the features that are about how community is built after we as a developer have withdrawn. Some of the key elements of that, and central to it really are the primacy that's given to community meals. The common house would have a kitchen where residents can cook and a dining space where they can eat together. And that probably happens once or twice a week in co-housing communities. And a lot of sort of business of the community happens there. It's a really key element of community living. Not everybody comes, and not everyone comes to all the meals, but they really do provide a valuable opportunity. And then the other aspect of co-housing is the design, the sort of co-productive approach, and the governance arrangements are all designed to build a sense of agency and control and provide resources that really are offering a different way of people relating to their community. And that shared management arrangement is typically supported by collaborative decision-making processes, community meetings, small working groups. I have one this evening to go to after this, and supported by organised sort of work mornings and other activities. So that is shared and is a key part, that sort of community life. And community building is really about not just those sort of formal community meals and the sort of management, but it's actually built through everyday activities. And part of this process is about creating a culture where everyone who's planning to move into that community want to be part of and co-responsible for creating a strong community. And so some of that is just a simple culture of acknowledging each other and sharing conversations on the pathways as they go about their day, making time for each other, cooking for each other in the common house, and taking on those simple work activities for the community. And although that seems quite a mundane thing to do, yesterday I was painting the pizza oven, and in the course of painting the pizza oven outside, many many people said hello to me as they were passing and stopped and had a chat. So really nice way of contributing to your neighbourhood, but also having that human connection. So that's my very whistle-stop tour of co-housing, co-production, and in the context of community led living and design. So
Francis, thanks ever so. That's a really great overview, and also both your insight in terms of your own personal experience, and also, as you said, you've got a meeting this afternoon. But as it is co-production week, what I've always got from both Marmalade Lane and a number of other co-housing projects is how it has been community-led and very much. And while there are some outliers, actually, this was a really great example of that being taken forward. It's something that we coin in our organisation, collaborate, how we blend both the building, but also the aging, as well as the support and networks around that, which I'm sure that Nick and Andy will touch on even more later. But for now, Francis, thank you very, very much. And staying with co-housing and sort of its roots in sort of community, Harry's been working closely with a number of organisations in the Midlands to really understand the pressing needs of a diverse community. And co-housing was one of the things that emerged from this. So, Harry, rather than me tell your story, I'm handing over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeremy. I'll just get this shared. Here we go. Is that up and running? Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jeremy. My name is Harry Randhawa. I'm a director from from Triangle Architects. We worked with Housing 21 on delivering Rupali Court, a purpose-built and designed older person housing scheme for people from an ethnically diverse community based in Lozells, Birmingham. Alongside this project, and I'm just quickly going to touch upon a scheme that we're also working on, which is Kindred House in Manchester.
Harry, sorry to interrupt you. One of our delegates has asked if you could be a little bit closer to the microphone. Your sound is very low.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, that sounds a lot better already. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm just going to touch upon Kindred House in Manchester, which is the UK's first purpose-built majority LGBTQ extra care scheme. That's with Great Places, and this is on site at the moment. And the interesting thing with that scheme is it is co-designed with significant consultation. A community steering group has been involved. And they continue to be involved. It's also involved the LGBT Foundation and other interest and local groups, and it involves a series of apartments that they helped design and shared spaces, and overall design was informed by the residents. Going back to Rupali Court, when we began in this project in 2020, we found surprisingly little recent guidance on designing housing for ethnically diverse communities. Key references included Accommodating Diversity from 1993 and a 2012 review by Levitt Bernstein and PRP for the HCA on non-mainstream housing. Both great resources, though are dated in some assumptions. More recent research, the Greater Manchester Centre for Voluntary Organisation report from 2022, challenges assumptions that minority ethnic communities universally live in multi-generational households or have similar housing needs, highlighting instead the diversity and complexity of ageing experiences. Earlier this year, Amar Jibon, My Home, My Life, was launched. That was with HousingLIN, and that was exploring the housing circumstances of Bangladeshi elders in East London, and hopefully marking the start of more research into housing for older people from diverse backgrounds. As with most projects, and returning back to Rupali Court, we began with a feasibility study responding to the client's brief, site constraints and target of 25 apartments. For Rupali Court, this also meant incorporating key housing principles, including a common house, shared spaces for social interaction and opportunities for privacy. At this stage, the proposals were purely conceptual, intended to test viability, and we stressed that the design would evolve through consultation with the residents and the local authority. Early 2022, the COVID pandemic struck and stopped us in our tracks, and our first consultation didn't happen till later in the year, October 2020, almost 11 months after our first interview with Housing 21. We went to the events with a banner showcasing our previous projects and this flyer. I think in many ways this is an apt representation of where we started. We knew who we were, we knew what we wanted to deliver, and that was it. We didn't know what the residents wanted, we didn't know what they wanted, how they wanted to live. We cannot overemphasize the need for involvement of local groups and organisations. We work with Legacy West Midlands, who have been a cornerstone in our ability to consult and liaise with residents. Groups such as this already undertake events, activities, and within the community, and their involvement is essential. In the early stages, we don't know the community, and having someone on board that is already there helps to create those new bonds and breaks barriers. Our first consultation events, held during the early months of the pandemic, involved the New Biggin Community Trust and a group of Bangladeshi women, some of who have actually moved in now. And Legacy provided the translation services. We started with no drawings or assumptions, just a blank sheet of paper asking them what they value, what they want as a community, and how they wanted to live. So what did we learn? Perhaps most striking was the residents' enthusiasm for shaping how they would live. They spoke about growing vegetables, sharing food, and being part of a supportive community. They also had clear aspirations for their homes, including space for hobbies, private and communal gardens, shared cooking and dining, multi-faith use, welcoming guests and local children, and places for quiet reflection and privacy. When dealing with the language barrier, which was a significant challenge, so we explored alternative ways of communication with residents for whom English was not their first language. Alongside translation services from Legacy, we developed a set of visual cards based on feedback from the initial consultations. These have since been used on other projects that we've reviewed with Housing 21 and have been an effective tool for residents to tell us their priorities and aspirations. And here's a sheet for one of the other schemes we've looked at where we use those cards to describe different elements of the building. Following the initial consultations, we developed this board as a reference point for residents, illustrating the key principles and values of co-housing, which Francis touched upon earlier, so I'm not going to repeat them, and mapping the journey from early design through to moving in and community life. It also provided invaluable assistance in helping contractors and new team members understand the vision of the scheme. Following numerous consultations, we developed a proposal shaped by resident priorities. These included secure environment, welcoming community garden, majority enclosed kitchens, a common house connected to the garden, a private lounge, prayer room in place of a guest suite, access to balconies or outdoor spaces, and informal areas for socialising. The consultation process also led to significant changes to the layout. The original feasibility was turned effectively on its head, with the three-storey element being moved to the east from the west, and the main entrance being located off Lazelles Road. Also, as part of that process, we initially offered a choice of balconies or not. What we found was every resident wanted access to an outdoor space, so in the end we've provided balconies to all the units. And what we found useful in this process, we're using visual imagery and 3D models to support the designs that we were trying to get residents to understand and express comments on. However, the most successful outcome was the residents' site visit. When we first started on this project, we said to Housing 21, and this is from my own experience and from my family, that certain ethnically diverse community doesn't have much access to or have seen a modern older person living. And so they have preconceived conceptions of what these spaces are. So the site visit, we said the site visit needs to happen to one of the extra care schemes or retirement schemes. This visit was invaluable. Residents were inspired by what they saw and afterwards provided some of the most detailed feedback of the entire consultation process. It helped them visualize what the development could become. And these were some of the comments just from that one event. It really was breathtaking how enthused they were. From this consultation stage, we were able to develop the final proposals for planning, which we submitted in I think it was late December 2021, and it was approved in June 2022. The scheme consisted on the ground floor of a separated car parking area so that the car park wasn't the heart of the building. The heart of the building was the courtyard in the centre, which all the balconies from all the apartments looked within. It allowed for interaction not just with people that were using the space, but also because of the distance, they could talk to each other across the balconies. The design also followed some dementia principles with a route throughout, so you could traverse the whole site and return back to where you started. On the first floor, which is the main entrance, you pass through the communal garden, which was a key element for the residents. And then on the second floor, we provided a secondary lounge that allowed for incidental meeting. And you can see these little bays along the Birchfield or the east elevation, which are further incidental spaces. So this was what we were submitted. These are the 3D visuals. I've put these in here because the scheme was completed in March, and I'm actually glad to be able to. We've literally just had new photographs sent to us by the photographer this morning, which I'm going to share with you. But as you can see, you can see the courtyards, you can see the balconies looking into the space. We wanted the residents to have relate to the neighbouring properties. So on view 2, we have the chain walk elevation, which has openings within an open deck access. And this was the completed scheme. I'm just going to put some quotes here. So Mohammed is one of our co-housing residents, and he said, Rupali Court will not just be a retirement home. These 25 people, we are a family. We should look after each other because we are all older people. This will be a fantastic opportunity for everybody to become a family. This was from Rashida. Rashida said, I have grandchildren who will visit regularly, and having the darker surfaces for the worktops helps with any spills and stains as they're easier to clean. I felt very happy to be asked and given the opportunity to choose from the options. And this is the common house. This is the multi-faith room. Again, the residents worked with the interior designers throughout the scheme, so they designed them. This is the incidental space on the second floor, which is used a lot. It's become a bit of a pulling point where people just like to watch the traffic and people walking past. And this is our deck access facing onto the chain walk. And that's me. Thank you for listening.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy, you're on mute.
You're muted, Jeremy.
Oh, sorry, I thought I'd unmute myself. Harry, I was just saying thank you very much for your presentation and sharing the latest photographs. Your photographer clearly chose a good day to take them as well. I particularly like the shadows and the sort of way that you can create space, as well as shading, as well as the deck access, as well as the generosity of the space. And from the outside, I think it's even more impressive than Birmingham Central Library. So, so high accolade indeed. But it also, I think your presentation follows on very neatly from what Francis was saying. So the relationship amongst the residents, the community, the use of shared space, food, all those sort of communal as well as private spaces as well, really critical in how we think about community-led and co-housing. So we're going to come back to you, and can I please encourage people to put questions to Francis, Harry, Nick, and Andy as they go along as well. We're going to take a slightly different look. But Nick, thanks for coming back to the LIN. It's really great to have you and the team, and Andy this afternoon. And I'm going to immediately pass over to you.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Thanks everyone for coming along today, and two fantastic presentations there from Francis and Harry. Really inspiring and giving me a lot of hope there when I'm looking at that, and just the kind of the vision really that you've managed to kind of bring to life in your work there. And Francis's kind of reflections on the sense of community, connection, belonging, and the support network that so many people are looking for when they're exploring co-housing. And I think that's so true for many of us, not all of us necessarily, but for many of us, these are the fundamental tenets of what makes for a good life. A sense of connection, sense of purpose, and something to do and people to do that with. And that's what we're going to talk about. I'm delighted to be here with my colleague Andy Cooke from Local Social, who's going to be sharing the bulk of the presentation. But I'm just going to kick us off with a few reflections, and really happy to be back working with HousingLIN. I'm always absolutely delighted to be part of this brilliant network and the amazing work that you're doing. So we're going to be talking about breathing new life into a neighbourhood, and how a community organisation, which is the one that Andy's leads, Local Social, helped revive a forgotten space. So we've heard there two fantastic examples of how to design for community in mind. I suppose in this we're thinking about how do you retrofit for community in mind, or how do you think about the spaces that belong maybe to big RPs, big housing associations that may not be getting used and utilised in a different way. So I work for an organisation called Community Catalysts, where I'm a programme director. The bulk of my work is leading something called Local Area Coordination. And Andy is the director of Local Social in Hertfordshire, and particularly in an area called town called Ware, and Andy will be presenting for the most of this. Briefly, a little bit about Community Catalysts. We're a social enterprise. We were established in 2010, and we really are a catalyst in many ways, working in and with local communities, but we work predominantly with local authorities and big institutions who are trying to think about and reimagine what public services could and should look like if you start with community. So our work is all about how do we build on the strengths of people and communities. A lot of that is about helping people set up small community enterprises around our community micro-enterprise work, our community enterprise work. For instance, there are 2,000 of those now on our little website called Small Good Stuff. Local people setting up their own businesses, their own enterprises to support other local people who may have cause to draw upon care and support. And my work is largely around supporting the development of this thing called local area coordination. So I work with local authorities who are rolling out and developing local area coordination, which is all about positioning a local area coordinator in a community, population around 8 to 10,000, to connect with people in a way that makes sense for them, helping those people to achieve their vision of a good life. And a massive part of that is about working differently with the assets, what we call the assets of that local area. So a lot of what we've just been hearing there from those great presentations, the great stuff that exists within our communities, our neighbourhoods, that helps us to thrive and live a good life. And I think when we're thinking about designing with local community, what do we know and what do we just hear there? Well, I think every neighbourhood is different, isn't it? So we need to do things that reflect that. How do we kind of have approaches that might have some form, but reflect the power and strengths and energy of each individual network and its own peculiarities, its own kind of energy. So each neighbourhood has people with skills, talents, gifts and ideas. But I think quite often we don't always see the good stuff that's going on, because often it's hidden by labels, assumptions, power dynamics, neighbourhoods that have a bad reputation for whatever reason, and the fact that we just don't know. And we don't know what we don't know unless we're present and unless we're alongside communities. But from our experience, when you take the time to really work in and with the energy of that local community and connect with people in a meaningful way, you find out some incredible stuff. And that's what we're going to hear about now from Andy, who is one of the most inspirational people I've worked with and had the pleasure of working with over the last few years. And he's just got this real knack for seeing places within his community and breathing new life into them. And that's what he's going to talk about now with their work at the Grange. So Andy, if you're there, which I hope you are.
Yeah, I'm there. Thanks, Nick, very much for that big introduction. Thank you for the invitation. It's really good to speak to you on a from a very different perspective than with the excellent presentation we've seen. I'm Andy Cooke. I'm the director and founder of little social enterprise here in Ware, just north of London. For context, I'll take you back to 2010. I gave up teaching and became a shared lives carer. And I've been working with James, who you can see on the slide here. He moved out of specialist residential care in 2010, where he'd spent just about all of his life. A learning disability and pretty complex epilepsy. I obviously got to know him really well, and eventually got around to asking what he really liked to do, and not what everybody else had told him he liked to do. He really liked cooking. He loves making cakes, and he loves being with people. And all he wanted to do really was to help people. So what I did was connect him up to the community, because he honestly didn't really know how to live in a community. He wasn't surrounded by other people with epilepsy. To the local important places like the local pub, the cafe, other people, and doing stuff. And once we'd done that, we sort of put our heads together, and I said, well, perhaps we could help other people in the same way. You don't have to have a learning disability or anything to be, not to be a bit outside of things. We tend not to use the word lonely or socially isolated. We tend to bring people together. So we used his skills of cake making and coffee brewing and started a little cafe. Initially, nobody came at all. And gradually we actually got to the right place and started the cafe on one morning a week. We now run 5 weekly cafes for people to come along to, and an evening session, and get through about 120, 140 people a week, bringing them together for mutual support, cooperation in the community. So Local Social, we started in 2016 as a community interest company, and we've moved on from there. If you want the jargon, Local Social intentionally builds on the assets of local places and local people, bringing people together for friendship and mutually supportive connections. So we don't ask people to do quizzes or play games or anything. They come and chat. Is basically what they do. So on the slide here, you can see on the right-hand side there, a place called the Grange, which is a community housing hall, absolutely beautiful, pristine hall, surrounded by, which is now Sovereign Network Group housing, about 80 odd properties. It's basically beautifully and pristine inside because you never get used. And when I came across it, it was used very, very little. It has been my mission, and it's really been a mission to breathe some life into it. So we obviously started doing a coffee morning there on a Monday morning, and gradually people came along, and the numbers increased, which was great. That was about 2 years ago. And also there were green shoots that began to spring up. They started to organise a few things themselves. They had a little bingo Thursday afternoon. They had a fish and chip supper. That one person took the orders, one person went and got the fish and chips, and they come and eat it together. Nothing really to do with us. We then began to, in Ware at that time, 2 years ago, the current housing association was taken over by Sovereign Network Group. And I'm really happy to say that had a really stimulating effect. Sovereign Network Group have a guy called Andy Sheen. He's not on this call, but I know we've got Lorna Collison from Community Engagement Manager. I'm not sure where she's from, but she's SNG. And he's Community Investment and Partnership Lead. So his job is to work with groups. And I have to say, he's had a significant and different impact. So working with him, and I'll come to working with other groups as well in a moment, we were able to put on more in that community hall. We were able to put on lunches. We were able to put on other activities, and as a result of that, we have worked with another organisation called Always Be You, which works with young adults. Does a fantastic job in Ware, giving them experiences that they would never ever have possibly had. we put our heads together and came up with a project called Pleased to Meet You, which happens at the moment just once a month, but it breathes life into that building. All sorts of wonderful things go on. We've had a professional singer, we've had building mosaics, we've had floristry, and people have actually caught on. People have really become engaged with what they're doing. Our numbers are increasing. Local Social in this instance was definitely, and we're very happy to be the catalyst for this. The project is very much Always Be You. So that's the real good news. How we come about this? We build, like you all do, you build relationships are really important, relationships with people, relationships with organisations, with councils, with local councils, with East Herts District Council as well, that have come to support us. We work at the speed of trust. We think trust is very important, and basically in Ware now we have quite a reasonable traction. We've been going 10 years. We had a celebration not so long ago, and we had 60 people turn up who wanted to come and celebrate with us, which was really great. So the Grange is becoming a place where people can meet. It's not been easy. It's not been straightforward, because people have been somewhat reluctant to come out. They've always spent their time indoors. It's not easy, but that's what we've done. Place is very important to us, so we do our coffee mornings in a pub. Surprisingly, it's not a bad place to spend your morning. We do it in a building society that invited us into their front office, which has now converted to a community link, and in church. We've had to move several times because our numbers just get bigger. So the key ingredients for the Grange really are the input from SNG, from not only from a funding perspective, which has been great, but they really do get sort of asset-based community development. Andy really gets it. He's also instigated a community partner group, which we meet fairly regularly with other groups, with a diverse of the things that people do, with men's sheds, with alcohol and abuse, that sort of thing, with sport, etc. And that too has helped us with our connections as well, and helps us to understand our communities even more. That's really us. That's what we do, and that's what we continue to do. Believe it or not, there's another community hall that looks exactly like Grange Hall on the slide here, just down the road. You wouldn't be surprised to hear that nothing much goes on there either. So we're going to put that model into that one, which is Folly View down in South Dobbs, with the support of SNG and other local organisations. I would like to make a big shout out to SNG. Big shout out to Community Catalyst, one of the national organisations we work with, helps us set up. We've got Sarah Murphy as a community enterprise catalyst in Hertfordshire. Nick, who I totally enjoy having in-depth conversations about community with him regularly. They've been a huge support. So where next is down the road for another hall, and also we're working with local council or with district council, however long they last for, in finding some land and actually a building in a part of Ware that is an SNG priority area, so that people we can build a community link, a community-led rather, community hub, and that's our vision for the next couple of years.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Andy. Thanks for that brilliant presentation. So if you're interested in hearing any more about Andy's work or the work of Community Catalyst or our work together, really, just feel free to get in touch, and then some details there that will be circulated as well. That's all from us. Well, Nick and Andy, you can see by the number of hearts and applause going up on the screen that you really touched a nerve, and that's a really great presentations, and a lovely counterbalance to some more around the physical and social design that we heard from Francis and Harry, and you're much more around the community. And Andy, I hadn't
realised and appreciated that link with SNG. I mean, the LIN works closely with them on a number of fronts, but I'm just wondering whether colleagues from SNG and you are part of the public living rooms initiative that SNG and a number of housing associations are taking forward, and whether that may be the way that the additional spaces that you create can provide that public living room.
I love the camarados.
Yeah, the camarados. Yeah,
Math Pots is one of my heroes. But yes, we have set them up, and we will be setting more up. Yeah, get out on the street. Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, and the people don't know camarados, we'll put a link into the chat room, and perhaps Andy, we can come back to you and Nick about perhaps a little feature about this with them taking that forward. No, that's absolutely fantastic, and thanks for rounding up the formal bit of the presentations. We've got about 15 minutes or so before we wrap up, and we haven't had many questions, but we've got some questions. So I'm going to kick off by sort of starting off and with Barbara's question. Barbara, who's a fellow Northeasterner. And this is a particular question I think, Francis, you'd like to answer in the first instance. How challenging are the collaborative decision-making process, and how much time does this take? Does everyone participate? And I know, Harry, you touched on the way you participated and engaged with people, but Francis, do you want to kick off on that? You're muted. You followed my
actions carefully. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll leave Harry to talk about the sort of decision making during the co-design process a little bit more, and I'll focus on sort of after moving in. And I mean, the honest answer is sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. Most people are involved in at least one of our working groups, whether that's community meals or outreach or finance or estate management, so grounds, allotments. So there's loads of little working groups. People choose the ones they want to get involved in, and those are much more informal, and fewer people are involved in each working group. But then there are community meetings where everybody is able to come along, and attendance varies depending on what's on the agenda. They're every 2 to 3 weeks, I think, at the moment. They previously have been every month, but we're busy at the moment. And decision making, it really depends on the nature of the item as to how challenging it is. It will take a while, to make a decision. It may take a while, and there may be smaller consultation meetings along the way and revisions to proposals as the community kind of works to try and find a solution that makes sense to everyone and that they can live with.
And would I be right, Francis, to think that there's sort of like the co-production, the lead up to the creation of a scheme, and then the governance arrangements, which are also co-produced?
Yes, absolutely. And that's really the bit that I'm pointing to, the sort of lived experience of community living and making decisions, which is, is undoubtedly sometimes hard. And I think in the co-housing context, it's made easier by all of the other things that wrap around it. It's not that we just meet for a residence management meeting and we never see each other outside of that context. All of those other contexts of getting to know each other really support decision making. And a lot of decision making is dealt with informally over meals and on pathways, really. But it's
And Harry, I think when you were talking, you were talking about the co-production being critical, but both in terms of understanding the needs of an ethnically diverse community, but also co-production with other partners. And I think you mentioned West Midlands Legacy. Do you want to sort of touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think with the design element of co-production, co-design, there is always a process of informing the group about things that are solid, you can't change, planning overlooking distances, dealing with sound from neighbouring properties or environmental issues, and that really, when you got those elements, you need to get that. You have to get that over to the residents, the group, and explain to them that this we can't do. This is a fix. This is kind of something we don't have any design option upon. And organised Legacy were very critical in that process because we're based in Manchester, the scheme is in Birmingham, because we weren't there on a weekly basis. Legacy were there to kind of deal with queries that came at an ad hoc basis, and were, like I said, they were critical to this whole scheme. When it came to design decisions, in terms of the positioning of the common house, or the positioning of the garden space, we always felt we were there to put forward what they have expressed to us, and from that try to get a consensus of, is this what the majority feel is the way they want to live. And we made some decisions that they completely disagreed with. I remember on Lozelle's, we had where we got the communal garden space, where we originally had a brick wall enclosing that whole space, and the residents said to us, we don't want that. We want to be open. We want railings so we can see people walk past. It took a bit of fighting with the planners on that one, but it worked, you know, and I think it really does work, and you can see that that the residents have enjoyed. In fact, one of the photographs from the communal garden space, they've already started planting vegetables in the planters, which is great. And so Barbara asked, does it take time? Yes, it does. It's a much longer process than, say, a normal design extra care scheme or an older person living scheme. That is in the nature of them. I think there are some decisions that get moved down into the construction phase, so say the finishes within the apartments with the interior designer, but even they take time. And a legacy again would have the materials within their space, and the residents, they would have events where the residents would come and choose. And I think one of the things we were involved in was residents picking the flat that they wanted to move into, because the building was designed in 3D. We went to one of the events and we sat with them and said, right, which flat are you looking at? We can show you what the view from the living room would be out into the courtyard. And some of them changed their mind. And so it's and those things change how you design the scheme in terms of the complexity of it. You try to keep it simple so that it's easier to absorb some of the changes that the residents want. But yeah, and not everyone participates. Definitely not everyone participates. There are some resident groups, some members of the group that want to be there, want to be part of the community, but would rather not get involved in the day-to-day decision-making process.
But before I come to Nick and Andy and ask them about the sort of the consultation engagement, because it's much more a broader community approach, and Andy, you very neatly referred to ABCD, asset-based community development, and I think that's a really bedrock for a lot of this. Harry, can I just come back to you, because Julian later on in the Q&A asked about what happens after design but before delivery. And I'm also interested about where does post-occupancy evaluation come in as well. So just two little things, and this may also be something, Francis, you know about as well. So things about that sort of prior to handover and how you keep people confident and motivated on track. Are there sort of ebbs and flows, you know, sort of highs and lows to people's, any insight into that?
Yeah, I think that's the nature. I think even I get that during a project. There's definite ebbs and flows, and you find that some people will come early on, will be involved in pretty much every consultation event we'll have, and then as the project proceeds, there's a bit of lethargy, and they will kind of step back. During the build, I think it helps that we arrange visits so they could come down and see the construction taking place. I think that helps a lot. And then making sure that, like I said, having where we've got choices in materials, they pick their door colour, you know, and so and so making sure that they're kept involved throughout that process, because it's again, it's what Francis said. You're not just building a building; you're helping build a community, and I think legacy. I really do think if it wasn't for legacy, the community wouldn't be there. And like, what's great is they're already having events in the common house. There always that, and it's just that if that wasn't carried out through the construction period, I don't think we'd be at that position.
Mm. So what I'm hearing from you is, building capacity isn't just a one-off event. It's a constant engagement. It's using different techniques. Francis, is there anything you'd like to come in before I hand over to Andy and Nick?
Only that by the time we're into construction and people are, heading towards preparing to move in, hopefully a co-housing group is ready, like has a life of its own, and as a developer we can step back a bit and they can really start focusing on what they need to think about before they move in, and the community starts everything from how are they going to furnish the common house, because we wouldn't be doing that, through to how are the community meals going to work and how are the meeting structures going to work. It's not something that we as a developer need to get involved in. That's really the point. It's their community, and that construction period is a brilliant period for them to really focus on that.
So what I took from Nick and Andy's was more about how you retrofit community engagement. I loved what you said, Andy, about it's about getting together. It's looking at the positive side rather than thinking negative around sort of loneliness or isolation. So from what we're talking about in terms of engagement, do you also experience those ebbs and flows? Are there things about how you engage with your communities? And another supplementary question is, are your residents mainly SMG residents, or are you inviting the wider community in as well? So just some background to that would be helpful.
Historically, I can answer that. Historically, unfortunately, non-housing association people were not invited, were not asked to come. SNG, thankfully, have got a much more open, and they're very keen, as I think they should be, on inviting others in. So it is a mixed group.
Right.
But there is definitely a bit of a stigma there, a bit of a hurdle to jump over. In the Grange, for example. So it's open to everybody. Local social is our philosophy. We're open to everybody. Everything is free. So when we put things on, there is literally no charge. So there is that stigma. The first bit of your question, I've forgotten now.
Well, it's very much about whether the techniques for community engagement that we've heard from Francis and Harry, from a building perspective, albeit thinking it about the community, are there similar approaches that you've adopted, or indeed in terms of local area coordination, Nick, as well? So, but if I kick off with Andy.
I mean, we're very much on listening to people, obviously, listening to community, building bridges, finding who are the connectors, who are the guys and ladies who walk down the street that everybody wants to talk to, who trust, etc. And it's very much listening to them, listening to their stories. We all know that stories are so important. So that's our in, if you like, I think, and mostly what we do, it's very simple. Nothing what we do is complicated.
Get talking. Nick, any comments from you before I go to Sheila's questions?
Yeah, I just so agree with what Andy's saying there, and the other kind of reflections on good engagement. I think for local area coordination, which is separate to what we're talking about here, me and Andy, but those are local authority appointed roles, so those people work for their councils, but as part of the design process, we're working with the local community that's going to invite that local area coordinator in to be part of the community. So they're going to work in that community, and local people are involved in the recruitment and selection of their local area coordinator. And when you think about how people are normally recruited within local authorities or any institution, really, that is quite countercultural to how things normally are. So we really push for that kind of co-production, proper kind of design with local people right from the outset, really, because you get much better insights, obviously, because local people know their communities best. As if we're talking about trying to win trust and insights from people, you've really got to be in it to win it, don't you? You've got to be in that place. You can't be making judgments about it from the outside. So getting in there, working with people, listening to people, inviting them to be part of that process. And then when the local area coordinator does start, they already have a group of people who understand what it's all about. They feel a sense of ownership of it, and they've got some immediate people to connect with when they're thinking about how do they understand the assets of that local community in a better way.
Brilliant. Sheila raises some interesting points around the sort of sustainability and sort of what succession planning for people who've been very actively engaged in projects. And she drew attention to the Amar Bari project, Harry, which you touched on as well. And I think she's asking, are there any sort of ways that one can sustain participation, and are there ways to communicate that? Does anybody have any insight around that? I think it's a mixture of wanting to make sure that the Amarbari project doesn't, like a great research project, doesn't just sit on the shelf. It's really about how to continue and how do you influence. And I suppose France's work of town. I mean, you're very influential in the co-housing. Are there sort of techniques from an Ariba point of view, Harry? Are there ways that you need to communicate this and promote? Obviously, the LIN is really good at doing what we do. So I'm thinking sort of probably strategic sort of communications. How do you influence it?
From Francis, sorry, after you.
No, you go first.
With housing, this scheme was delivered with Housing 21. They were the instigators of this, and you need an organisation that is as forward-thinking as they are, and they are looking at other schemes. And I think it is by delivering more of them, more schemes that deal with elder people from different ethnic backgrounds, but also socio-economic backgrounds, away from the private ownership model. I think is the way we get this out there, showing that there are ways to deliver housing, aspirational housing, across the board. I think, as you know, Jeremy, I've been talking about this scheme on numerous days, and we are talking at the Co-housing Network event in September as well. I think it is just by promoting it and by kind of by doing events like this and showcasing what can be done, and not being afraid. I think someone mentioned about budget. This was an expensive scheme, mainly down to the site. I think that's, but at the same time, sometimes you've got to go big at the beginning to just show the possibilities, and then you can work back from that. And deliver schemes at different levels.
Right, look, we've got a couple of minutes. We've got some great questions that snuck in. Michael, thanks for yours around allocations. It may not be strictly something that the team know because they're not directly managing the allocations, although I suppose, Francis, from a personal level, you might. So do you want to touch on Michael's question?
Well, I think the way I would answer that is what enables co-housing to work is that people really want to be there and to be part of a community that they're taking responsibility to co-create. And so whether that's at the outset or later with relets and resales, it's that shared intention that's really key. And so whether that's open market sales or nominations, that needs to underlie that approach, really, because that's what communities need. They need people who want to be part of something and co-create it, not just be receiving the benefit of it, because over time it will not succeed. So that's.
I suppose also from a Homes England point of view, it will also be where the funding is coming from, social grant, the allocation arrangements. But whereas perhaps something like town is probably more with the local authority planner, rather than the allocations team from time to time. So, but I think that's probably sorry, Harry. Yeah.
So Rapali Court, well, obviously, is all affordable rent, and that was an agreement made with Birmingham City Council for the allocation team that there would be a process of residents being involved with the community first, and then the allocation team would link them up with Housing 21, and then there'll be a process of if they'll fit in and agree with the ethos of the scheme. And that kind of allows for a bit of control over who moves in and that they're willing to kind of commit to the community.
Well, thanks very much. And I think so you touched on some answers which also might help Melissa, and it's lovely to have you. I don't know whether you're in Barcelona or in the UK at the moment, but lovely to have you here this afternoon. Again, you're sort of like, how can you build and they will come? It's a mixture about what's the attractive offer, but also some of the planned allocations and the relationships through that. I'm sure we'll come back to that. And there are a couple of other questions on technology and the like that I'm afraid we haven't got time to cover, but if you're interested in technology, please do join us next week's HAPPI Hour, when we'll be looking at technology for an aging population, and we really want to sort of uncover a lot more around that. And if you haven't already seen, the LIN is currently has a survey out with members to look at the impact of AI around housing for older people and supported living. But on behalf of the HousingLIN, can I personally thank all our 4 fantastic speakers. Thanks very much for your wonderful presentations. We look forward to picking up with those. Your copies of the presentations will be out later this week. Can I thank Sally? We'll be missing you, but look forward to getting you back in a year's time or so, and for all the help you've done behind the scenes with the rest of the team. And I wish you all a successful evening, and thanks again. Bye for now.